River Great Ouse rises as an insignificant stream near Brackley in Northamptonshire, and over its 160 mile or so course to the sea, its waters are reinforced by no fewer than 10 tributaries. It's navigable from Bedford down to the Wash, a distance of some 90 miles. We're going to explore the mostly non-tidal section above Denver Sluice, and we're going to look at some of the tributaries, including the River Cam up to Cambridge. For the first 20 or so miles up to Ely, the river runs in an artificial channel. It's helpful if you think of the Great Ouse as two separate river systems. There's the Bedford Ouse, which runs from Bedford through St Neots, Huntingdon and St Ives to the village of Over, where it becomes tidal. Just below Erith, it enters a completely artificial channel called the New Bedford River, which runs straight as a die for some 18 miles to Denver. And there's the Ely Ouse. This really starts life as the River Cam in Cambridge, flows down to Pope's Corner, where it becomes known as the Great Ouse, and flows on through Ely to Denver. The two rivers are joined by a narrow and twisting navigation called the Old West River, which connects from Pope's Corner to Erith. To complicate the maps even further, there's an earlier artificial channel running parallel to the New Bedford River, and it's called the Old Bedford River. We're going to join the river system here at Salters Lode Lock, having come in from Well Creek on the middle level. The middle level is a system of navigable drains across the fens. The first short section up to Denver Sluice is tidal, and Salters Lode Lock can only be operated for a short time either side of high water. Boaters should always seek out the lockkeeper and follow his instructions for a safe passage through to Denver Sluice. At low water, we were able to see the hazardous spit of mud extending out from the tail of the lock. It was an unusually low neap tide, which meant that we had a window of less than 20 minutes to make our passage to Denver. In fact, there was some debate about whether or not we would be able to go at all. The keeper, Paul, had briefed the crews that there wasn't time to operate the lock. He was just going to open up the doors at both ends, and we were to charge through as fast as we could. It was an interesting boating experience. The first sight we get of the mighty Denver Sluice is awesome. Even on this neap high tide, we will be locking down off the tideway onto the non-tidal river. The fresh off the river can only be discharged when the tide is out. Just below the sluice to the right is the entrance to the New Bedford River. Although it's navigable, we don't recommend it. The tidal currents are very strong, and there are sandbanks with a real risk of getting stranded. The original Denver Sluice was built in the 1650s by the Dutchman Cornelius Vermuyden. It was part of a massive land drainage scheme which eventually drained the swamps, turning the peat and rich alluvial soil into some of the most productive farmland in Western Europe. But watermen supplying the transportation needs of Bedford and Cambridge suffered badly as a result. There was no navigation lock in the sluice, and the mighty sea doors were kept shut for days at a time. Vermuyden Sluice was eventually demolished by a huge flood in 1713, and rebuilt again in 1750 by a Swiss engineer, Labellie. It was totally rebuilt yet again in 1832 to a design by John Rennie.